Visitor Center. You'll see this photo here. The thing that's somewhat remarkable to me anyways about this photo, as Bill Johns will tell you, this photo was taken right out front of this school. This photo was taken in 1956. So these are some of the picketers. I don't know, can you read the signs?
Integration is illegal.
Integration is unconstitutional. Stop integration. This one's got one that says, put me down as no nigger lover. Like, bad stuff. Keep Poolesville white. My personal favorite one, which I don't understand, is integration is communism.
If you have a problem with it, it must be communism.
It must be. So the background to this.
Hi guys.
And I hadn't planned on doing this, so I'm loose with a little bit of the facts. Brown v. Board happened in 1954, and Brown v. Board overturns Plessy v. Ferguson. Plessy v. Ferguson said that separate but equal was legal, in essence, and established or allowed segregation laws to continue. Brown v. Board then comes in 1954, and the court rules separate is inherently unequal. If we're separate, we can't be completely equal. So the piece that I had been missing that I need to double check on, but Poolesville was the first school in the state of Maryland. It was the first school in the D.C. area to be integrated, and it was integrated by order of the court. Apparently what happened was Brown v. Board was issued very unusually in two pieces. And you have to understand, nothing about Brown v. Board was normal. They did the Brown v. Board case because the State Department wrote a letter to the Supreme Court basically explaining that we're competing against Russia for support, and Russia goes into countries where the people aren't white and go, look how America treats their own colored people, would have been the phrase they would have used. Why would you want to trade? Why would you want to be an ally? Why would you align yourself with those people? And so that's when the Supreme Court agreed to take their segregation cases, desegregation and education cases, combine them into what became Brown v. Board, and then in 54 they issued separate but equal. But they also said in 1955, we're going to tell you what this really means. In 1955, their ruling came out with the famous with all deliberate speed, meaning that we were going to begin integrating the public schools in the United States.
Someone close the door, please.
Vague phase of with all deliberate speed. Anyways, so between 54 and 55, Montgomery County had built a bunch of high schools slightly earlier, and they had built 4 high schools on the exact same floor plan. 2 of them were for African Americans, 2 of them for white kids. And they bought the same school books, and they wrote what they call a brief, a friend of the court brief to the Supreme Court between 54 and 55, and said, yeah, here in Montgomery County, we are separate and equal. We're both, because we're special like that. And the court viewed that as hostility to the 54 ruling, which it really was. And so the Supreme Court actually ordered that Montgomery County Public Schools desegregate a school in their county immediately, meaning the next school year, which was 1956. So the school board met, and they chose Poolesville for, I think, a number of reasons, not the least of which is the Poolesville area had, at the time, a large African American community. There were times that this school was majority minority, as recently as the 1980s. So they chose Poolesville. They chose 9 kids, middle school and high school, because at the time junior and senior high, because this building was both a junior high school and the high school. This building was built in 53. And so they announced that Poolesville would be integrated. The first day of school, there were hundreds of protesters. It was in the hundreds. A lot of them, there were car license plates from as far away as South Carolina a lot of Virginia cars. So these people had come out here. A lot of them weren't local people, but there were a lot of local people here. The state police showed up in numbers. The first day when this picture was taken, actually the pictures I'm going to show you were taken. This is right in front of the school. This gravel road is the one the buses would have come in on and turned around out in front of the Baptist church. So they're down from there. What they did is they decided to bring the kids in through the cafeteria. So they rerouted the bus around, and where the doors are in the cafeteria now, those were these big fire escape windows. So those 9 kids actually came through the fire escape windows in the back, and then it was announced to the crowd that the African American students were in the building. And so the state police then had to basically almost set up a hand barricade out in front of the front doors to keep the people from coming in. And it was crazy. It was very much like the pictures and film that you see from Little Rock, we're told. It didn't sustain here as long as it did in Little Rock in terms of the protests, but in the building, like, the state police would walk with the African American students through the hallway and take them into the building. And we'd go in and make sure that the building was all right. So you can see this is the end of the first day of school. Connie Morella was a 25-year-old teacher. It was her first day of teaching, and she walked into this. She later became a congresswoman for like 8 or 10 years, something like that. And she's talked about publicly how just plain frightening it was. So you imagine being a new teacher and then being thrown into that. So they're guarding them as they head for the buses to go home. George Barnes, who I've heard speak here before, was one of the first 8 kids that integrated to high school. He said his uncle would be waiting on the front porch with shotguns because they had so many death threats. They wanted to make sure they could get him into the building. The reason I put this on here is it's kind of interesting. It sounds simple, let's put African American kids and white kids together. But what do you do with the teachers? One of the bigger opposition groups to integration, at least in this county, were actually the African American teachers. Because what was their fear?
Losing their jobs?
Yeah. All right. Plus, you take someone like Ms. Clark up here, who they quoted. She was educated in segregated schools. That was her education process. She had taught for a number of years, but she had taught in segregated schools. And then they told her, "Oh, you're one of the chosen teachers, so you're going to this first year. You're going to go to a school that's majority white, majority school, and you're going to teach classes that are mostly with white kids." And that created issues because there were parents who did not want their children to be taught by African American teachers. That goes away pretty quickly. But that's, it's another facet we don't talk about. All of the principals at African American schools lost their principals' jobs. They were all kept, I believe. A couple of them chose to retire, but the rest of them ended up becoming assistant principals in the other schools, and then many of them later became principals of those schools as years went on. That's sort of it. But there were state troopers here for the entire first year. They would escort the kids from room to room, that kind of thing, and it was pretty hostile. So we have a student who is looking at, he's a freshman, actually creating a documentary. He wants to be a filmmaker on the integration school in here at Poolesville. And the first picture I showed you, if you go to Little Rock Central High, where the Little Rock 9 were, that's pictures in their Welcome Center. So, like, what happened in this high school was, in essence, national news. And it was a step in the process. So I think we're also, I haven't got official permission for this, I think we're going to have a GoFundMe account to go ahead and get a historical marker put out front of the building, talking about the integration of the schools. There are 4 times in Poolesville history that it made national news. The first time was obviously the Civil War because of the major encampments here. Battle of Ball's Bluff, not far from here. And the death of Baker. Baker's body was in some of the buildings that still exist in town, was put on display. Then pretty rapidly, in the 1930s, some man in Poolesville decided he wished to not be married anymore. And instead of going the more traditional divorce route, he decides to kill his wife by throwing dynamite into the house. And so the dynamite murder got national coverage for a couple of days. The integration of this high school, and it was this building, the building was built in 53, got national coverage. And then Poolesville was on the cover of Life magazine because one of the censuses, I think it was the 1960 census, may have been the 1950 census. Anyways, and I don't remember the number, but it was like, the United States is growing by whatever it was, 947 people a day. Well, it turns out that there were 947 residents of Poolesville. So National Geographic got everybody in town to turn up at the field out here, and they took an aerial picture of the people and put that on the cover. This is how much America is growing every day, by how many people. So there's your Poolesville in the spotlight. We're overdue, I guess, for a national story. I would not suggest you do the dynamite route, though. Personally. All right, sorry.
It is a way to end the marriage with a bang.
I didn't have time to prepare it. I'm like doing this off the top of my head, but anybody have any questions?
Any questions? We have
Yes.
one.
That first picture you showed us,
Yeah.
I think when you did this in class,
Yeah.
you said that one of our students raised their hand and said that one of the people looked like another one of the students in that class.
So, well, what happened was, one of the kids asked to see the picture after class, in between classes. And he looked at the picture, and the kid holding, which is by far the worst sign, he told me he thought that was his grandfather. So, that's the first time I showed the pictures here. So it's this one. It's the first time I showed that picture here, and so that was a bit disturbing. Mr. Etheridge, who's the head of security, knows far more about this than I do. And he would love to talk to you about it. Joe Gehring, I think, is going to try and make a documentary on this. So that'll be pretty cool. And if we do GoFundMe, please give me money and GoFundMe so we can have a historical marker out here.
Yay!
Okay.